Look at what's making the headlines at this hour. The Israeli Defense Forces have revealed details of their strikes on the IRGC surface-to-surface missile engine production site in Sharud in Iran. In a video shared on social media platform, the IDF has stated that they have struck the target located at a distance of 2,000 kilometers. Israel's top military officer has made a firm declaration amid the rising tensions with Iran. IDF Chief of the General Staff Lieutenant General Eyal Zamir has stated that Israel will continue its strike on Iran for as long as necessary. US President Donald Trump has reignited controversy over the Iran-Israel conflict by openly calling for regime change in Iran. Speaking after the US strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities, Trump has said Iran's current regime cannot make Iran great again. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel has declared that Israel is very close to achieving its key objective against Iran. Netanyahu made it clear that Israel will not be dragged into a prolonged war of attrition but also won't halt its operation prematurely. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has arrived in Moscow and is expected to meet the Russian President Vladimir Putin. Later today, the high-level talks have come at a critical moment following the recent US strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities, which have sharply escalated tensions in the region. A senior UN official has urged Iran to allow the International Atomic Energy Agency access to nuclear sites recently bombed by the United States. The official has warned that the region cannot afford any other violent escalation, especially one that puts civilian lives at risk. The Press Information Bureau Fact Check has issued a fact check countering viral social media claims that the US aircraft used Indian airspace to strike Iran during the Operation Midnight Hammer. The PIB has clarified that no such route was taken. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian joined a massive rally at Tehran's Exizab Square today. Thousands of citizens have gathered to show the support for Iran's strong military response to Israeli strikes. Anti-war protests have broken out in New York City following US airstrikes on Iranian nuclear facilities. Meanwhile, major cities across the US, including New York, remain on high alert amid the concerns of possible retaliation or the unrest. Under Operation Sindhu, 285 Indian nationals have been successfully evacuated from Iran. A special flight brought them from Mashhad to New Delhi on the 22nd of June. The evacuation follows rising tensions in the region after the recent US and Israeli airstrikes. Now viewers, focus is back on the top breaking developments in the aftermath of the US's decision to bomb Iran. The United Nations Security Council has held an emergency meeting following the United States strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities. The United States vigorously defended its military strikes on Iranian nuclear sites during the meeting, framing the action as a long overdue measure to protect the global peace, regional allies and American lives. Acting US Ambassador to the UN Dorothy Shea delivered a forceful speech stating that Washington had exhausted all the other options before launching the strikes. She has accused Iran of fostering 4 decades of hostility towards the West, highlighting its long-standing threats against both the US and Israel. While the US envoy has made a direct appeal to the Iranian leadership to avoid retaliatory measures and instead return to diplomacy, warning against escalation. The US envoy called onto the Security Council to confront what she called as Tehran's long-standing agenda of destabilizing, saying that Iran must terminate its drive for nuclear weapon. Brian Thomas is joining me with more update. US has called the strikes overdue while Iran shouldn't escalate, a return to diplomacy. There is Of course, a strategic effort from the United States, given the response by Iran, is being awaited. Brian Thomas joins me to add more details in a brief manner. UNSC has held the emergency meeting after the US's decision. What likely could impact the UNSC meeting, in fact, statements that are coming up as the US has pressurized Iran to return to diplomacy and end the hostilities?
Well, clearly, the pressure still remains very steadfast itself, where US has urged Iran to avoid any escalation, any military escalation, and come to peace and start a negotiation in terms of diplomacy. And this also comes after US has bombed the nuclear sites also with their airstrikes, and now also when Trump early in the morning itself suggested a regime change also to further avoid escalation, and now clearly also an emergency meeting has also taken place where the UNSC has convened this very emergency meeting to address the rising tensions also following the US strike on Iranian territory. This session is also coming after mounting international concerns over the broader regional escalation itself, and clearly also US President and US has also came out and clearly stated the fact that Iran should not start any retaliatory attacks and should avoid any retaliation of any sorts and should take the point of diplomacy to avoid any escalation from both US and Israel side itself, Chandra. Yes.
Absolutely. In fact, Brian, now in this regard, we are also tracking more updates. Stay on with us as meanwhile, Iran has formally requested the United Nations Security Council to take up what it described as a blatant and unlawful act of aggression following the recent US military strikes on its nuclear sites, urging the 15-member body to issue the strong condemnation. Iran's UN ambassador Amir Saeed Iravani has told an emergency meeting of the United Nations Security Council that the US decided to destroy diplomacy and that the Iranian military will decide the timing, nature and scale of the country's proportionate response. This has come as a draft resolution circulated by Russia, China and Pakistan called for an immediate and unconditional ceasefire and denounced the attacks on Iran's nuclear facilities, even as it avoids directly naming US or Israel. The diplomats have said that member states have until today evening to submit feedback on the draft, but it remains unclear when a vote might take place. All right. Iran has urged the UNSC to issue strong condemnation. Brian, in this regard, there are already many nations that have joined from the UNSC members calling for complete restraint for Iran to practice, but Iran urging UNSC to issue the strong condemnation of the US strike is a big step that Iran is in fact now looking forward to, as this could also mean that there could be further retaliations coming in from the US given the Iran's defense over the retaliations and strikes. Brian.
Clearly, see, we have to understand the fact that when this emergency meeting has been convened at UNSC, now US has clearly stated the fact that Iran should avoid any escalation and should resort to diplomacy to avoid any escalation itself. And US has made its ally very clear also to the fact and urged the Iran to either a regime change or to avoid escalation and go for mediation or go for negotiation in terms of diplomacy. Now, to that fact itself, Iran has also submitted a formal request to the UNSC, urging it now to take up what Tehran called a blatant and unlawful act of aggression by the US. And this also come amiss when US launched airstrikes at their key nuclear facilities. Now, Iranian diplomats there have been arguing the strikes also violated international law and jeopardized Middle East stability itself. And they said that this is nothing. And this is said by Tehran and the diplomats of Iranian side, saying that it is nothing but a blatant and unlawful act of aggression. Simran.
On that, in fact, Brian, continue to be there on the telecast. We have more updates coming in, as Israel's UN envoy has now stated that the UNSC that the cost of the inaction would have been catastrophic with regards to the recent strike, saying a nuclear Iran would have been a death sentence. Israel's UN envoy Danny Danon has said that the attacks had made the world a safer place, rejecting calls for the condemnation. Danon also said that this is what the last of the line of defense looks like, when every other line has failed, while accusing Iran of using negotiations as a camouflage to buy the time to build the missiles and enrich the uranium. All right, Brian, as there is the ambassador of Israel that has issued the statement, and in UN, what is also being talked about is the fact that Iran having the nuke site is a bigger threat to the world. How exactly other nations at the UNSC also reacting to this?
Well, clearly, Simran, now the fact that yes, this has happened to the fact that now many such incidents have been happening, and clearly because of the fact that there is a concern also that has been spreading on the Israel side and the UNSC side and also the US side also that when Iran launched the attacks on Israel, Iran launched and they attacked the hospitals. There was a cancer hospital that was attacked itself. There was critical civilian rather infrastructure that was also attacked. And now to the fact itself, there have been a pressure also from Israel ambassador to UN also where they defended also the actions by US and Israeli forces and stated that the cost of inaction would have been catastrophic. And Iranian nuclear would be a catastrophe for both US and for the entire global nation itself. Now, very importantly, we also need to note the fact that the envoy also warned that Iranian missile capabilities could also posed an existential threat, also necessitating preemptive defense measures. Now, when we were speaking to the Israeli side also, they were also saying the fact that yes, they have not harmed the civilian infrastructure in Iran, but the critical nuclear facilities were destroyed of the fact because that could rather lead to catastrophe, that could lead to something more devastating itself. So that is the reason why US has also been there and speaking about the fact that there should be a change or Iran should be coming to diplomacy side itself. Yes.
All right. In fact, on that note, let me also get in more details coming from North Korea. North Korea has said it strongly condemns the US strikes against Iranian nuclear facilities as a grave violation of a sovereign state's security interest and territorial rights. North Korea's foreign ministry has said, and I read the statement, that the United States and Israel are the culprits of the current tensions in the Middle East, born out of Jerusalem's ceaseless war moves and territorial expansion, accepted and encouraged by the West. While Israeli airstrikes reported by local media in Parchin, home to a military complex southeast of Tehran, Israeli strikes have previously been reported in Parchin, including in October, on an alleged nuclear weapons research facility there. Iranian air defense have also said to activate in the city Karaj, west of Tehran, where parts of uranium enrichment centrifuge are manufactured and where Israeli have also struck anti-aircraft batteries. All right, now Brian continues to be with us on the telecast. Brian, Israeli airstrikes have been reported in Parchin. This is on the basis of the alleged suspicion of more centrifuge and military complex that possibly Iran must have targeted. It has been activated in Karaj, and this is what we are learning. This is, of course, the fallout of the 3 nuke sites that have been targeted. What remains to be, in fact, the toll as well, if we speak about the civilian areas in both Iran and Israel, if the retaliations are only becoming aggressive?
Well, clearly, now at one point of time, you see the allies have been chosen, being chosen by other states, other countries itself. And North Korea has also issued a sharp condemnation of the US strike. You see the Iran foreign minister also visiting Russia also to choose to take them as an ally itself. And again, US is also aligning with Israel. And on the other hand, you can see the attacks and the barrages are being escalating every now and then. Now, clearly also it has been said that both sides, both Iran and Israel side, have been reportedly firing in each other's territories. Now, when we speak to the Israeli authorities or the Israeli people, they're staying there, even the former IDF soldiers or anyone for that matter, or the deputy mayor we've been speaking, they have been saying the fact that Israel has been very precision in their attack itself. On the other hand, they have been attacking on critical infrastructure, that is the military capabilities, and not harming any civilians itself. Now, on the other hand, we've seen IDF also posting many such videos also on their platform X, saying that Iran side have been putting out barrages and missiles on civilian infrastructure. We talk about Tel Aviv metropolitan city, we talk about the city of Ashdod, or any other place for that matter, where many such hospitals were targeted, many such cancer hospitals were also targeted. Year. There was a baby compartment also was targeted. So yes, the escalation have been increasing, and now other nations have been choosing their allies also to start a war-like situation, which is still ongoing at this point of time. But again, this remains very critical of the fact that because the escalation has been increasing day by day, because now it has reached the 11th day also of the escalation that has been going on.
All right, Brian, thank you very much with the latest details that you are able to gather. And as per the Iranian state media, next what we are learning is tensions are flaring once again in the Iranian capital as air defense systems were activated across central Tehran districts. The situation remains under close watch. Amid the fears of further escalation, Arzu Seth is joining me with more details. In fact, on that, situation is under monitoring in Iran, Arzu. And this is what also remains to be on the supervision by the world leaders, as everyone is closely watching the details coming from the Iranian's political regime, which fears to be very highly impacted. Arzu, when you're tracking these details, can you take us through where all the damage is extensive and very significantly, in fact, devastated in Iran?
Well, definitely, Israeli airstrikes were reported by the local media in Persian, also the home to the military complex southeast of the Tehran, and Israeli strikes have, previously been reported in Persian, including in October on an alleged nuclear weapons research facility there, and Iranian air defense also set to activate in the city of Karaj, west of the Tehran, where parts of the uranium enrichment are manufactured, and also where Israel has also struck anti-aircraft batteries. So by targeting the Persian, Israel appears to aim at degrading Iran's explosive engineering infrastructure linked to a nuclear weapons program, not just enrichment sites exploiting regional fights. These airstrikes come in the context of expanding Israel-Iran confrontation following earlier strikes by both sides on key nuclear and military sites. So we have seen, the missile action from both the sides, and Iran now are on the high alert, and also, air defense activated in the Iran central Tehran districts also. Yes, Imran.
All right, Arzu, continue to be on the telecast, as what we are further learning about the Iranians' political leadership statement is that Iran Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, who has just arrived in Moscow and is going to hold the talks with the Russian President Vladimir Putin, has stated that he is going to discuss the confrontation's common challenge and threats with the president following the US strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities. Araghchi stated that we and Russia always have common concerns and common enemies as well, and we have consulted about coping with these common challenges and threats. That is that we will be doing with the Russian president. Araghchi emphasized that the two sides will strive to bring their positions closer to one another under these new circumstances. Arzu is joining me with more updates. Arzu, now Iranian, in fact, foreign minister is going to be holding talks with the Russian president. What is going to be the top priority on the dais, as it is expected that Russia will support Iran in its own ventures for the retaliation?
Definitely, Simran, this seems to be very important meet, amid the conflict between Iran and Israel, and the Iranian Deputy Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, also said that he will discuss the common challenges with the Russian President Vladimir Putin amid the growing regional tensions. And in a high-stake diplomatic move, Iranian Deputy Foreign Minister arrived in Moscow and announced that he will be holding discussion with the Russian President Vladimir Putin to address the common challenges and also currently facing by both the countries, particularly in the light of the US and Israeli airstrikes on Iranian nuclear and military sites. And He also said that given the current situation, sensitive situation in the region, I will discuss with the President Putin the common challenges we face, regional stability, and the need to strengthen the strategic cooperation between Iran and Russia. So the growing Western military presence in the region will also, one of the points will be discussed, the threat to the regional energy corridor and security, the future of the Iran nuclear program, and multilateral diplomacy. So this visit comes after the US and Israel launched coordinated airstrike on Iranian nuclear facilities, drawing sharp international concern and warning for retaliation from Tehran. So this remains to be seen what comes after this meet, because amid the tension, this is going to be very crucial as far as the Iran and Israel conflict is concerned. Yes, Imran.
All right, in fact, thank you, Arzu, for the latest updates that you are gathering at this point of time. Now it's time to shift our focus to more details. Indian benchmark indices, Sensex and Nifty, have opened lower, dragged by the concerns over the ongoing tensions in the Middle East region. Sensex has dropped 800 points, Nifty tests 24,850. In the broader markets, the Nifty mid cap and Nifty small cap indices dropped by 0.6% and 0.59%. Dr. Sharat Kohli is joining me with more updates. In fact, all right, on the market side, what we are looking at is some uncertainty. Dr. Sharat Kohli is there with me live on the telecast. How do you predict right now the kind of state in which the markets have fallen into? There is enough enough uncertainty given at this point of time, as there are still protests erupting in New York as well. There are political deliberations and the UNSC meeting going on. What impact all of this, which is brewing in and around the Middle East region, with also the backing of the US, is going to have on the markets at large, on the West Asia and in the Middle East as well?
Good morning, Simran. Good morning to the viewers of NewsX. I think it will all depend upon how things take shape from here. We are aware that the Iranian foreign minister is meeting President Putin. So if Russia gives the support, then obviously this whole conflict can escalate into kind of a world war. And, China and Russia both have emphasized, and they have been against this conflict. They have been asking America to desist. So we'll have to see, as to the situation is very dynamic. And we'll also have to see how Iran reacts. So the markets would be very keenly watching Iran's reaction, whether Iran aggravates its attack on Israel or Iran decides to attack the American military bases around in the Middle East. There are a lot of them. There are about 40,000 to 50,000 soldiers of America which are positioned there. So whether it decides, so I think the situation is very, very volatile. Well, on Friday, the markets had celebrated the President Trump's 2 weeks hiatus, which he declared, but then that turned out to be a bluff. And on Sunday, we saw this happening. So I think markets are very, very keenly watching as to what happens. Situation is very dynamic. At this moment, my advice to investors is, if you are a short-term investor, I think you should keep away from markets for some time. For midterm, you need to keep a very close watch. If Iran does not react or if the matter subsides here, the market will again, because the undertone of the market, Simran, the very important point to note is that the undertone of the market is still bullish. The Indian domestic factors are pulling the market up, but the international cues are pulling the market down. So the moment we see some ray of hope or some peace coming, or if Iran tries to bury the hatchet here, I think you will see the markets rising again. But I think that seems to be a very remote possibility at this point of time, because there's something cooking in Iran's kitchen which we are not aware of. And when that reaction comes, the market will surely react. But the long-term view for the market is that every time there is a correction, if you're a long-term investor in markets, we have a very popular saying, Simran, that any time is a good time for a long-term investor. So look for these corrections, look for bargain hunts, look for the stocks which will give you long-term benefits. And you could be FMCG, defense, renewable energy. These are some of the stocks. But crude oil, I think, is playing villain at this point of time. $79 to $89 can escalate the price of raw material of many industries, especially, for example, paint industry, where oil is used, and of course, oil marketing companies. So a very dynamic situation, Simran, and it will be worth watching on an hour-by-hour basis at this point of time.
All right, as you are in fact also reiterating that it is enough volatile and it needs to be watched very closely within an hour basis. All right, on that note, thank you very much, Dr. Sharad Kohli, for joining in at this point of time on the broadcast and in the latest update in the Operation Sindhu. Now, Minister of State Prabita Margarita has received 285 Indian nationals which have been evacuated on a special flight from Mashdad to New Delhi on the 22nd of June. Operation Sindhu continues in full force. The Minister of State, Pavitra, has received the students that have been stuck. While the mission Sindhu does not also only in fact facilitate the repatriation of the Indian students, but also lend a helping hand to the nations of the neighborhood, which Nepal also in fact continues to be benefited by the Indian government's outreach of receiving the people who have been stuck in the Iran conflict as well. Aditya Vadavan is joining me with more updates. Aditya, what is the latest updates of the total number of Indian students evacuated so far under Operation Sindhu? And if we also speak about lending a helping hand to other nation as well in the neighborhood, what are you tracking with that regard as far as Operation Sindhu continues in full force?
Well, absolutely. If you see, Simran, about 1713 total Indians have been so far evacuated. And, some of them, some of the Indians, those who have been evacuated from the war-torn Iran, were some of the students. And some people, during at this current juncture, there is a time of pilgrimage happening in Iran, because due to which many Indians had gone to Iran to an area called Mashhad, where a pilgrimage is ongoing, and due to this sudden breaking of this Israel-Iran war, they have had to face difficulties while being in Iran. Yesterday also we had a conversation with some of those Indians who have been evacuated by the consistent efforts of the Indian embassy in Tehran, which facilitated their stay at their hotels and getting them return flights, tickets, books free of cost. And at this juncture, all the Indians who have returned to India were very emotional, and they were telling what difficulties did they face. They were seeing missiles and drones flying in the skies, and some of them intercepted and some of them hitting. So a kind of they were engulfed with a fear that they might be killed in this war, but they kept their cool, they kept their emotional equilibrium. These are all the stories of all the people who have just returned from Iran. Some students had to leave their course midway, and some had gone to for their pilgrimage to Iran. But at this juncture, all of the Indian nationals were hugging their loved ones at the Delhi airport yesterday, and indeed it is a moment of rejoicing for them. Simran.
Of course, in fact, this is a very big relief moment if we speak as per what we can see even in the visuals. This is also a very important and a crucial juncture where the Operation Sindhu has kicked in and evacuated these many students. Otherwise, there is in fact growing concern, as many embassies across of many nations have already put out their advisory, issuing a word of caution to the nationals of their origin. While the MEA spokesperson on Randir Jaiswal has tweeted that India's evacuation efforts continue under the Operation Sindhu. Over 1,713 Indian nationals have now been brought home from Iran. Aditya, in fact, a quick word on the MEA spokesperson's statement that you are tracking.
Well, absolutely. The MEA spokesperson, Mr. Randir Jaiswal, has been, lauding, the success of the Operation Sindhu, which has, managed to back so many Indians who were struck in Iran due to this Iran-Israel war. And, the MEA in successive advisories that they had issued had said that, the well-being and safety of the Indians is of utmost importance to the Ministry of External Affairs, and they gave topmost priority to the safety and security of the Indian citizens. And in accordance with that only, as under the Operation Sindhu, I beg your pardon, under the Operation Sindhu, they have been brought back safely back to India, and some more are expected to come back. Simran.
Sharing in these latest inputs, and on that note, viewers, with more news and updates on the other side, stay tuned. It's time to slip into a short break.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.